Okay, in this video I am going to show how to replace a fogged up insulated glass unit with a new insulated glass unit. Now, this was a casement window on my kitchen, which I have taken out. And previously, I have taken apart this frame using guidelines that I had found online. The corners of the frame were held in place by brads, 2 brads in each corner. And I've removed the brads from the 2 opposite diagonal corners. They have a slight head on them, so after digging around it, it is possible to get a tool under that edge, like a little cat's paw type tool, and then you can pull it out. And what I've done here is, in one of the 2 holes, I've simply replaced it with a decking screw. The other hole I just patched. Okay, so the idea is to replace those with screws, so I can now open up this frame again. Okay, and I did that for 2 reasons. One was, after I took out the fogged unit to measure its size and order the new one, I put it back in because it took about 5 weeks or a month for the unit to come in. Okay, it cost me about $65 for this 16 by 36. I got this one at American Garage Door and Glass. Okay, now we'll see how this goes. I'll do this one step at a time. First step is I'm going to take the screws out and pull the frame apart. I'll hit pause. I'll give you some updates on this job, okay? Okay, first update, I just took out this screw. That was the screw that I used. It was just a decking screw that I had. On this other corner, I noticed I used a slightly smaller screw. I think it was because when I looked at the side of it in terms of what I could fit through before it would begin obstructing with something else, or the brad itself was only a certain length. I did replace the screws with a slightly longer length when I saw that that there was no obstruction and it would help hold it together better, okay? Now, over on the glass side, I've taken a razor blade and I've simply cleaned off the caulking or rubber that they use to seal it, because I want to make sure that I get as smooth and tight a fit in the gasket that I can. I measured the old glass at 16 by 36, accurate to a 1/16 of an inch, but still, of course, this is not going to be exactly the same as the other one. I just rounded it to the nearest 1/16, so I didn't want it to be too big. If it's a little bit too small, that's okay. If it's a little bit too big, it might not fit in the frame properly. Okay, so the idea is I'm just getting rid of anything that might build up on the edges and prevent it from sealing. So I'm going to do that with the razor blade. Okay, I'm going to look over it carefully and make sure I get all those spots. Okay, then I'll pause and go to the next step. Okay, here's a section right here where the rubber caulking was really sticking up beyond the glass, not by a lot, it's just that it wasn't. You want the glass to define the dimension. You don't want the dimension to be defined by the rubber caulking, okay? That's just a little bit of excess caulk there. It may not have mattered, but anyway, I just trimmed it off with the razor blade to make it as smooth across, okay, as I could, okay? Now, I'll go to the next step. Okay, I had to take off this weather stripping because the weather stripping actually goes in a groove that's going to go onto both of the pieces. So I took it off on this side and I took it off on the other side. Okay, now I'm going to separate this by tapping them apart or prying them apart. Okay, you can see here that I'm tapping it apart. I'm using a block of wood. I'm using a mallet, and I'm just tapping this one in this direction. And on the other corner, I'm tapping it out in that direction. Okay? And on this one, I'm just pushing it apart. The idea is to separate these two into two sections, diagonal sections. Okay, here I've managed to get this corner further apart. Here, what I did, I started actually pushing with my finger on this tendon, pushing that out, pushing the gasket out of that seal. Now it's loose. I'm going to be able to separate this wooden frame now and take the glass unit out. So there it is. Two sides have been pushed off. Now I will be able to basically, probably just by hand, pull out this glass unit off of this remaining two sides. Okay, here I did end up using the block also on the wooden frame while I held on the glass unit, pushing the frame off of it. And now you can see I've got separation here, and I'm going to be able now to just pry this off. This end is here still tight, but there we go. So now I can separate it. Okay. Okay, here I have the unit separated, and now it's probably time to show a mistake I made. When I was taking it out, I didn't realize that this gasket wrapped all the way around, and I used a razor blade, and what I thought I was doing was prying out the gasket, but what I actually ended up doing was cutting the gasket along in several locations before I realized the damage I was doing. So my plan is to reuse this gasket, but after everything is in, is to then caulk with some silicone a bead where the glass meets the wood, and basically try to replace what I damaged. Now, I didn't damage it 100%, so here's an example on a certain edge where I didn't damage it. So I'm going to position this so this is at the bottom. Because of all the gasketing that's happening here, the water is going to run down and it's going to collect on the bottom. So that's where I want to have the original gasket in place. And I still might want to seal that to keep water from getting in, although water getting in there though is not so much the damaged spot. The damaged spot is the water getting into the wood. So actually maybe I don't need to caulk this at all. It's the other sides where I'm concerned with the water getting in between the wood and the gasket, okay? And that's where I don't think the caulks will do any damage in any location, but I'll have to see how that goes, okay? I just wanted to show you that. It was a mistake I made when I was taking this off. Okay, now I'm going to pull off this gasket. I didn't realize I was going to have to reuse this gasket. That was the other part of it. Not that I wanted to damage it when I was taking it out, I just didn't know how it was constructed. I thought I was prying it out, but I was actually cutting it. Anyway, I'm going to take the gasket off, and I'm going to move it on to the new piece of glass. Okay, I've got the gasket off, and I've swapped out that old pane. Now I'm going to put the gasket around the four edges of the new pane, and I have reversed the gasket like I told you, so that on the outside of the bottom it does have the original rubber seal at the bottom.